In the popular imagination, the Basque people are a living fossil, a biological time capsule from the Paleolithic, frozen in the shadows of the Pyrenees, while the rest of Europe was swept away by the tides of migration. We are told they are the first Europeans, the last survivors of the Ice Age, a population so distinct that their blood and their tongue are relics of a world that no longer exists. It is a seductive narrative of purity and isolation, one that paints a picture of a people standing defiant against the clock for 30,000 years. But the moment we look closer at the molecular record, that story begins to fracture. The idea of the ancient Basque as a pristine remnant of the Stone Age isn't just an oversimplification, it is a fundamental misunderstanding of how humans survive. The Pyrenees rise like a limestone fortress, shielding a land where geography seems to dictate destiny. For decades, linguists pointed to Euskara, a language with no known relatives, and isolate in a continent dominated by Indo-European tongues, as proof of a total disconnect from the rest of humanity. If the language was ancient, the logic went, then the people must be too. This created a powerful myth, the myth of the refugium. The belief was that as the great glaciers retreated, a specific group of hunter-gatherers remained locked in these valleys, never mixing, never changing, simply enduring. It is a vision of humanity as a museum exhibit. But humans are not museum pieces. We are a restless, mixing, and highly adaptive species. The real story of the Basque region isn't one of isolation, but of a very specific kind of interaction. When we peel back the layers of history, we find that the fortress of the Pyrenees was never actually closed. It was a filter. To understand why the Basque people look different in the genetic data, we have to stop looking for a pure ancestor and start looking at how a population manages to absorb the world without losing itself. The map of humanity wasn't written in a lab. It was carved by the sea and the stone. This is Helix Horizon, where we trace the code that refuses to stay still. If we journey back 40,000 years, the Franco-Cantabrian region was indeed a sanctuary. As the Ice Age tightened its grip, northern Europe became a frozen wasteland, forcing humanity into southern pockets of survival. The caves of Alcheri and Ekain are silent witnesses to this era. The bison and horses painted on these walls in vibrant ochre weren't just art, they were the cultural heartbeat of a people navigating the edge of extinction. For a long time, it was assumed that the people who painted these caves are the direct, unmixed ancestors of the modern Basques, but genetics reveals a much more turbulent transition. The first crack in the myth of Paleolithic purity appeared when scientists began sequencing the genomes of the first Neolithic formers, the Anatolian migrants who brought agriculture to Europe roughly 8,000 years ago. In most of Europe, the old European DNA was largely swamped by the newcomers. However, in the Basque country, something anomalous happened. The farmers arrived, yes, but they didn't replace the locals. They merged with them. Analysis from sites like El Portalón reveals that the early Basque population was a hybrid. They were the descendants of local hunter-gatherers and incoming farmers who had spent centuries blending together. Paradoxically, the modern Basque person actually carries more farmer ancestry than the average Spaniard, but they also carry a significantly higher signature of the original Mesolithic hunter-gatherer than their neighbors. This is the first major pivot in our understanding. The Basques aren't Stone Age survivors in the way we thought. They are the ultimate successful experiment in Neolithic integration. But this discovery revealed a hidden cost to the purity narrative. If the Basques are a mix of hunter-gatherers and farmers, just like the rest of Europe, why do they still feel so separate? Why does the genetic data show a sharp edge where the Basque territory begins? To find the answer, we have to look past the arrival of the plow and toward the arrival of the sword. Because 4,500 years ago, a new signal entered the European genome, a signal that changed almost everything, except, perhaps, the one thing that mattered most in these mountains. Around 2500 BC, the genetic landscape of Europe was violently rewritten. From the vast Eurasian steppes, a wave of nomadic pastoralists, the Yamnaya, swept westward. They brought with them horses, bronze weaponry, and the early dialects of Indo-European languages. Their arrival wasn't merely a cultural exchange, it was a demographic upheaval. In most of the Iberian Peninsula, the male lineage was almost entirely replaced within a few centuries. The local Y chromosomes vanished, replaced by the R1b haplogroup. This is the steppe signal, a molecular mark of conquest and expansion that defines the ancestry of modern Western Europeans. In the Basque country, the R1b lineage is not just present, it is dominant. Nearly 90% of Basque men carry this steppe signature. If we were to look only at the paternal line, the Basques would appear to be the most modern or migrant-descended people in Spain. This shatters the romantic notion of a population that has remained genetically untouched since the cave painters of the Paleolithic.
Yet this is where the mystery deepens. While their Y chromosomes changed, their language did not. While their neighbors began speaking the precursors to Latin, Celtic, and Germanic tongues, the peoples of the Pyrenees held fast to Euskara. This creates a profound paradox. A population can be genetically overhauled while remaining culturally and linguistically sovereign. It suggests that the Basqueness we recognize today isn't a matter of ancient blood, but of an incredibly resilient social structure. They didn't survive by hiding in caves. They survived by absorbing the newcomers into an existing cultural framework so strong that it forced the migrants to learn the local tongue, rather than the other way around. What scientists expected next never appeared. Usually, when a new genetic group becomes dominant, the local culture dissolves into the melting pot. But in the Basque region, the genetic clock seemed to slow down after the Bronze Age. As the Roman Empire expanded, bringing roads, laws, and the Latin language, the Basque heartland acted as a biological and linguistic dead zone for imperial influence. While the rest of Iberia became Romanized, the Basques remained an outlier. Recent studies in current biology have confirmed this lack of leakage. Unlike the rest of Spain, which shows significant genetic input from North African populations during the Moorish period and from various Mediterranean groups during the Roman era, the Basque genome shows almost zero traces of these later migrations. The filter of the Pyrenees finally closed. For nearly 2,000 years, the Basques practiced a form of extreme endogamy, marrying within their own communities, sheltered by a geography that made large-scale invasion difficult and a language that made social integration with outsiders nearly impossible. This is the point where the story stops being about them and starts being about the mechanics of human identity. We often think of isolation as a passive state, something that happens to a people because they are forgotten by history. But the Basque data suggests that isolation is an active choice. Their genetic distinctiveness today is not a relic of the Ice Age, it is the result of a long Iron Age. It is the signature of 2 millennia of saying no to the mixing that was standard practice across the rest of Europe. But this raises a haunting question for the modern era. If their distinctiveness is the result of recent isolation rather than ancient ancestry, what does that mean for the myths they have built around themselves? We see the Basques as the last of their kind, but in reality, they might be a glimpse into a universal human process, the creation of an us through the intentional exclusion of a them. This process of boundary making is etched into the very soil of the region. Scattered across the Basque hills are dolmens, massive stone burial chambers built by Neolithic and Bronze Age hands. In Basque folklore, these weren't built by humans, but the Gentiliac,
a race of giants who lived before the arrival of Christianity. These myths serve a vital purpose. They anchor the people to the land, creating a narrative of belonging that transcends the shifting borders of empires. But even a fortress has its limits. In the modern world, the walls of the Pyrenees have become permeable. The language that once acted as a genetic shield is now a cultural choice, spoken by hundreds of thousands, but no longer required for survival. We are entering a period where the Basque code is being decoded and in some ways rewritten. The shift from biological reality to cultural mythology is perhaps most visible in the figure of Mari, the pre-Christian goddess who is said to dwell within the heart of the mountains. In the Basque mind, the landscape is not merely scenery, it is a participant in their history. Mari represents the earth itself, uncaptured, unbowed, and fundamentally separate from the Abrahamic traditions that flattened the spiritual diversity of the rest of Europe. This mythological framework provided a psychological perimeter that was just as effective as the limestone peaks of the Pyrenees. When a people believe their origins are tied to the very stone of their valleys, the pressure to assimilate into a distant empire, be it Roman, Visigothic, or Frankish, loses its gravity. However, the modern era brings a new kind of pressure, the pressure of data. For a long time, the Basque people were used as a control group in European genetics, the supposed pure baseline against which all other migrations were measured. But as our ability to sequence ancient DNA has improved, we've realized that using the Basques as a proxy for the Paleolithic is a scientific error. They are not a primitive population, they are a highly evolved one. Their high frequency of Rh-negative blood and specific HLA, human leukocyte antigen types, once thought to be alien or ancient markers, are more likely the result of a phenomenon known as genetic drift. When a small population remains closed off for generations, certain rare traits don't just survive, they amplify. What we once interpreted as the original state of humanity is actually the signature of a bottleneck. The Basques didn't stay the same while the world changed. They changed in a different direction. Their genetic profile is a specialized adaptation to a specific history of social and geographical enclosure. It is a reminder that in the grand experiment of human evolution, silence and stillness are also forms of movement.
This reveals a truth that is often uncomfortable for those who seek to tie identity to purity. The very things that make the Basques unique today, their genetic distance from their neighbors, are not the result of being untouched. They're the result of 1,000 years of intense, localized history. The ancient Basque is a modern creation, a byproduct of the Middle Ages more than the Stone Age. We see this in the evolution of Euskara itself. While the core structure of the language is pre-Indo-European, its vocabulary is a living record of every group the Basques ever encountered. It contains Latin loanwords for church and writing, and Romance influences in its legal and social terms. The language survived not because it was isolated, but because it was flexible. It was a vessel that could hold new ideas without leaking its original form. This is the hallmark of the Basque experience, the ability to incorporate the foreign without becoming the foreigner. And this is where the story stops being about a specific ethnic group and begins to explain the future of our species. As globalization accelerates and the world becomes a single hyper-connected genetic pool, the Basque example offers a counter-narrative. It shows us that identity is not a static inheritance passed down through blood like a family heirloom. It is an active, ongoing performance. The Basques are not unique because their DNA is old. They are unique because they have maintained a collective memory that refused to be erased by the convenience of the majority.
The map of the Basque country today is a vibrant, industrial, and highly modern landscape. The fortress is now a hub of aerospace engineering, avant-garde architecture, and world-class gastronomy. But even in the glass and steel of Bilbao, the invisible boundaries remain. The question for the 21st century is no longer how did they survive the Ice Age, but rather how long can a cultural island persist in an ocean of digital uniformity? As we look at the Basque genome, we aren't looking at a relic of the past. We are looking at a masterclass in resistance. We are seeing how a group of humans can use geography, language, and myth to create a sanctuary for their own version of reality. But the code of humanity is never finished being written. The same forces of migration and technology that the Basques filtered out for 2,000 years are now entering the heart of the Pyrenees through the screen and the high-speed rail. If the Basque shield was built on a foundation of linguistic isolation and geographic barriers, what happens when those barriers are rendered obsolete by a world that no longer requires physical presence to belong? If the code that kept them distinct is finally merging into the global signal, we have to wonder what other islands of human experience are currently being reclaimed by the rising tide of the modern world. The mystery of the Basques isn't that they were different from us, it's that they chose to stay that way for as long as they did. But as the genetic lines blur and the last isolates of the human map are integrated into the network, we are forced to ask, what do we lose when the filters finally fail? And if the Basques were the last pure story of Europe, what is the next chapter for a continent that has finally run out of places to hide?